Jeff Rice had always wanted to write a vampire story. Even more so, he had always wanted to do something set in Las Vegas. He did both with his novel The Kolchak Papers, which centered on a newspaper man named Carl Kolchak solving a vampire case. ABC wanted to adapt it into a TV movie, and they sent it to the science fiction/horror writer Richard Matheson, who, along with using the book, took inspiration from the classic newspaper comedy The Front Page, with its wisecracks and the constant bickering between the reporter and the editor. Dan Curtis, who had previously created the vampire soap opera Dark Shadows, was set to produce it, and he immediately pictured Darren McGavin, who most of you know as Dad from A Christmas Story, to play Carl Kolchak. A lot of the personality came from McGavin himself, who said, "When you're working that fast in television, you have to draw upon yourself. Use who you are to a greater extent than you would in a play or film." The Night Stalker aired on a Tuesday night and got a 54 share in the ratings, and was the most viewed TV movie ever made. ABC ordered a second TV movie, which was also made by Dan Curtis and Richard Matheson, and then they ordered the TV series. Curtis and Matheson declined, but Darren McGavin not only starred in it, but he also got involved in the producing and the writing. The series was canceled after one season, but it became a cult classic, and was even the inspiration for the series The X-Files.
Now, the reason I'm doing a top 7 is because I got the idea from someone else. The It Couldn't Happen Here website did top 7, and I really like the idea, because then I can include the 2 movies while still giving full honor to the series. So, get out your best wooden stake and put on your worst suit, because I'm going to report to you the top 7 episodes of Kolchak the Night Stalker.
Jack the Ripper, who murdered women in 1888, is still alive, and even older than Kolchak's suit. He's murdering women in Chicago, and only reporter Carl Kolchak of Independent News Service believes it.
This is the first episode of the series. Now, some people do complain that it's too much like the first 2 movies, but they do a great job of condensing that kind of a story into an hour format. And depending on how you watch the series, like if it's on TV reruns, they might not show the 2 movies. So I think this is a great introduction to the character Carl Kolchak.
McGavin said Kolchak is a seeker of the truth who will break the veil of secrecy, and that's his motivation behind everything. But McGavin also said kids love Kolchak. He's a fun character, and Kolchak looks and acts like a newspaper reporter from a cartoon. And McGavin is such an animated actor in his voice and mannerisms that he makes him hilarious yet believable. He's brash, outspoken, and wears the tackiest suit. Originally, Kolchak was supposed to wear a Hawaiian shirt and Bermuda shorts, but McGavin came up with a suit, with the thinking that because he had been fired from a New York paper years ago, that he hadn't bought a new suit since.
This episode shows just how far Kolchak will go to get his story. Now, it always opens with his narration from his tape recorder. But his first dialogue scene is Vincenzo, the newspaper editor, yelling at him for impersonating a police officer to get his story. None of the police like him. Other journalists look down on him, even the mailboy, but nothing deterrs Kolchak. He just insults him right back and gets back to his case. This is what he tells the mailboy. "Go play with your pimples." This is what he tells female journalist Jane Plum. "You are being very foolish, Jane. You are being dumb, Plum." He'll put himself in ridiculous situations, like when he looks like a perv and gets arrested for lewd proposal. And he puts himself in danger, like when he goes in Jack the Ripper's house. And Kolchak isn't this brave monster hunter. When he sees Jack, he screams and runs away. It's hilarious, but it also shows that he's a regular guy who always gets his job done.
Madeline is a fashion model, but she is also a witch, and through magic spells is killing off the competition. But will the pen be mightier than the broom?
This was the episode that I was the most excited to see. Not only is the guest star Laura Parker, who played Angelique the Witch on Dark Shadows, which is my favorite show, but here she is, playing another witch. So it's like a variation of her iconic character. When we first meet her as Madeline, she's cute, coy, and kind of kooky. And I was actually impressed by how funny she was. But as Kolchak and the audience find out she's a witch, she becomes vicious and insane, like a rabid animal. And she even does a more manic version of her signature Angelique laugh.
Spells are just as vicious and violent for 70s television. She controls these living mannequins that push a man out a window, and she kills a girl in the shower with scalding hot water. You can't accuse me in front of anyone! There's nobody here but us! And them! And they don't care!
Right, people say that she's too over the top. I'm guessing those people don't watch Dark Shadows. But considering the outrageous, fun, and scary tone of the episode, I think it's the perfect performance. By the way, by this point in the series, the producing, the writing, and the starring was getting to Darren McGavin, and he was irritable. And after a scene, he went up to Laura Parker and said, "You don't know how to play a witch!"
One of the victims of Janos Skorzeny, the vampire from the first movie, Catherine Rollins, comes out of her grave. This lady of the night gets a job as a prostitute and drinks the blood of her customers.
The vampire story of the first movie was the scariest story they ever did. And this episode is its true sequel, and it lives up to the original. Although they don't specifically mention Skorzeny, Catherine's body, her undead body, comes from Las Vegas, where the first film was set. And just like him, she has dark features. She's super strong and doesn't speak, only hisses.
Entrance into this story is creepy and atmospheric, and is kind of a homage to the Wolfman's return in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. A lady gets a flat tire and pulls over to a construction area. She cuts her finger, and then two hands come out from the ground. She gets a job as a prostitute, which not only feeds into the sexual element of a female vampire, but is also a smart move, because she can meet an endless supply of victims who are probably going to be alone. Now, because of his previous vampire experience, Kolchak figures it out right away, so he's able to get right into the action. And the way he destroys her, by lighting a huge cross on fire, it's like something that Peter Cushing would do. It's so exciting.
Along with the horror, I also love the biting humor, and how well it's intertwined with the horror story. Very few people are as funny as Darren McGavin, and as soon as he figures out that there's a vampire in California, he tricks Vincenzo into sending him there so that he could write a story about a guru. And there's this whole subplot of him blowing off the guru story so that he could work on the vampire case.
Kolchak!
Hello? Hello, Tony? Oh, this is a real lousy connection, Tony. How did the interview go with Amerta Mira? Well, she did, huh? I said Amerta Mira! It was a little place off the lobby called the Char Pit.
The guru, Carl! Did you get what we need? How did the interview go with the guru?
Overcooked! Look, this place is right by the airport. Hello? Hello? Goodbye. However, the lady that he connives to write the guru story for him is also a realtor. And that's how he finds out where the vampire's at. So without his one-of-a-kind personality, he wouldn't have been able to stop her.
This is a second TV movie, and I hope you have the stomach for it. In Seattle, Dr. Richard Malcolm is a 144-year-old alchemist who's been killing belly dancers for their blood, which he uses in the formula that keeps him alive.
For this one, Dan Curtis and Richard Matheson basically do what Sam Raimi would later do with Evil Dead 2, which is tell the same story, but amp it up and make it crazier. And let me tell you, it's groovy. This is where that fun tone of the series really begins. The supporting characters here are more eccentric and unusual, which not only gives the film a funkier vibe, but it gives Kolchak more to react to. With all the belly dancers, there's a kinky humor, and the villain's lair is way more elaborate.
In the last movie, the climax took place in Scorzony's dilapidated old house, whereas Dr. Malcolm has an entire decrepit underground city, the Seattle Underground. It has cobwebs, creepy music, and mummified families sitting at a dinner table. Matheson got the idea from when he was on a family vacation in Seattle, and it's a real tourist attraction. When they first built the city, the tides kept coming in and flooding it. So after the Great Seattle Fire, they rebuilt it on elevated streets, and the original buildings are now underground. For the movie set, they made it bigger and spookier than it really is, and it gives the Night Strangler a unique look and personality.
As a series, Kolchak is known for its guest stars and cameo appearances, but this movie has the 3 best ones. They all give really funny performances, but all 3 of the actors are also all horror related, which is what you want in a horror comedy. There's John Carradine, who used to play Count Dracula as the head of the newspaper. Margaret Hamilton, I'll get you, my pretty. The Wicked Witch of the West from The Wizard of Oz plays Professor Crabwell, what a name. And Al Lewis, Grandpa from The Munsters, who's another Count Dracula, plays the Tramp.
I'm getting too old for this. Gotta see a doctor. Arthritis. Bad stomach. Back. My corns are killing me. Charlie horse. Varicose veins. I'm getting a migraine. Are you alright? Yeah, of course.
At first you think he's going to kill him, which is a nod to the vampire of the first movie and to Al Lewis being a vampire star. But then he starts complaining about his alien body, which is a total grandpa move. And what's especially neat about these 3 stars is that what they're famous for, Universal Monster movies, The Wizard of Oz, The Munsters, are still popular. So even modern audiences will recognize them and be pleasantly surprised to see them. The final thing that makes this movie great is how they flesh out the dynamic between Kolchak and Simon Oakland as the editor Tony Vincenzo. They have a rhythm and are like a comedy team. Kolchak will say and do any crazy thing to get a story. Vincenzo knows Kolchak is a good reporter, but Kolchak is a constant headache for him. They always argue, but deep down, you know they respect and like each other. And at the end, they're driving off together, and it's so much fun to imagine their future adventures.
A man who is a test subject in a sleep study has been dreaming of the Pamel Faye, the Cajun boogeyman. And now this monster from his dreams is killing people in real life. And for Carl Kolchak, it's anything but a snooze fest.
This is the show's best original monster, because even though it's made up, it seems like real folklore. The Pamel Faye comes from New Orleans, which is a place filled with legends and superstitions. And it seems to be partially based on the Rougarou, which is a Cajun boogeyman that supposedly roams the swamps. And the old-timers use it as a way to get kids to behave. If you're naughty, the Rougarou will get you.
With him coming from the test subject's dream, he's almost like a predecessor to Freddy Krueger. And the way they film him in the shadows, and sometimes just show his eye, he looks so creepy. And wherever he goes, he always leaves a trace of Spanish moss. In one of the most suspenseful scenes, Kolchak discovers Spanish moss in his desk, and he knows the Pamel Faye is coming after him.
Ah! That ceiling's not licking! It's been here looking for me. The Pamel Faye's been looking for me! So eerie because the monsters never enter the office. So in this one, it really feels like nowhere is safe. Now, the comedy is just as groovy as the horror. There's a running gag on this show that even though each episode has a different police captain, none of them like Kolchak.
Here, there's Keenan Wynn as Captain Siska, aka Mad Dog, who's undergone group therapy to get his temper under control, and with Kolchak around, is constantly on the verge of losing it. My wife convinced me that I should join group therapy. What's the point of yelling? All that hysteria! I've learned to control my rage! Now, when I tell people something, I just say, I'm okay. You're okay.
Him and McGavin are great together, and he's the only police captain to ever do a return episode. And I would not be okay if I missed him.
The elderly Jewish residents of the Roosevelt Heights neighborhood in Chicago are being killed by the Hindu demon the Rakshasa, which takes the form of the person you trust.
This episode was written by Jimmy Sangster, who wrote Horror of Dracula, The Curse of Frankenstein, and other horror classics for Hammer Studios, and I absolutely love his story. I always loved in his Dracula pictures, how he made the setting come alive with all the scared villagers. And he does the same for Chicago. I actually live near Chicago, and very recently, I was in a Hungarian kosher grocery store. So this felt like the real Chicago to me.
In this show, Roosevelt Heights is the old Jewish neighborhood that's been going downhill. There are rats everywhere, dirty movies at the theater, swastikas are graffitied on the wall. We find out later that it's actually a Hindu sign to fight against the Rakshasa, but the old folks don't know that. And the neighborhood just has a dangerous air. But this is their home, and they're not going anywhere.
I have so much sympathy for them. They're all played by these old-time Jewish character actors. Even the comedian Phil Silvers has a part. So they have that charisma where you instantly like them. Plus, they're so vulnerable. They're in a rough neighborhood. They're physically weak. And even Vincenzo writes off their strange testimony as them being senile. And making it worse for them, as the Rakasha takes the form of the person they trust. So they think they're walking towards their rabbi. They think they're walking towards their relative. So these are not just generic victims. You care about them and don't want them to die. While it shows the weaknesses that come with old age, it also shows the special strength that the elderly can have, especially when it comes to Ruth McDivitt as Emily.
She does a sort of Dear Abby column at the newspaper called Miss Emily, but here we find out she's just working there to get more life experience so that she can write a novel. She's full of life, very funny, even though no one else is. She's always on Kolchak's side and helping him with little favors.
No, wait! I'm not the Rakshasa. I'm the Kolchak. Carl Kolchak.
To combat the Rakshasa, one must be pure of mind, and most of all, honest and brave. Perhaps you better go home. Take this. The Rakshasa will present himself to you as someone you know and trust.
Well, I got one problem, Pop. There isn't anyone that I trust. Rakshasa takes the form of Emily. That's the one person that he trusts. And you could always tell his affection for her. And it gives some real warmth to this very spooky and downbeat episode.
Janos Skorzeny is killing women and draining their blood in Las Vegas. Kolchak figures out that he's a vampire and gambles with his life to stop him.
I love how serious this movie is. Don't get me wrong, I love the comedy that comes later, and I think it was the right way to go. But the seriousness of this initial outing makes it so much more exciting. When Kolchak first sees the evidence, he doesn't think supernatural. He sees the bodies drained of blood and the 2 marks on the neck, and thinks it's an insane person who thinks they're a vampire. Don't give Kolchak my phone number. It isn't until he sees with his own eyes Janos gets shot at while taking down a police force. And Kolchak is a man who always believes his own eyes. He thinks people have a right to know. It's their lives. But he faces opposition from the police, the newspaper, and the district attorney. Because our hero's story is so interesting, they're able to only show the vampire occasionally. But like the shark in Jaws, it's always for maximum terror. Janos Skorzeny looks a little bit like Barnabas Collins from Dan's Dark Shadows, but he's got bloodshot eyes. He hisses and growls in his pure viciousness. Barry Atwater said he took the attitude that he's like a heroin addict. He has to have blood, regardless of consequences. And if someone tries to stop him, of course he'd be furious. Vegas has such a unique assortment of people, with everyone doing their own thing, that he's able to blend in. Behind the scenes, Barry Atwater actually walked around for about 40 minutes in full makeup, and no one looked up from their gambling. And like any supposed human, the police have a record on him. They know he's over 70, that he used to love the nightlife, and due to wars and riots, there's always been a large supply of dead bodies in all of his known whereabouts, which explains why he's never gotten caught. They really make it seem like a vampire in the real world. Kolchak will even make jokes about Count Dracula.
Well, it looks like Bela Lugosi's struck again.
It all comes together in the ending. The climax where Kolchak fights and stakes Skorzeny is exciting and scary. But for me, it's the falling action that really puts the Night Stalker over the edge. Happy as a lark, Kolchak brings in his story to Vincenzo. Vincenzo tells him the district attorney wants to see him. But then he adds, "You're one hell of a reporter." Which from this hard-nosed newspaper editor is the highest compliment.
The police tell him that they have a warrant for his arrest for murder, and that he will go to jail or a mental institution for the rest of his life, unless he forgets the story. He has to leave town. They've already made his girlfriend leave town. He tries to find her but can't. And in the final scene is you're looking at Kolchak and listening to his final recording on the case. It reminds me of the famous "There are such things" speech that Edward Van Sloan used to give at the end of the Broadway play Dracula. And it tells the audience that no matter what they would like to believe, vampires could be anywhere.
Well, that's it. The book's finished. And now you have to be the judge for yourself. I haven't had a decent night's sleep since all this has happened. And now you might find it difficult too. So think about it and try to tell yourself, wherever you may be, in the safety of your home, in the comfort of your bed, try to tell yourself it couldn't happen here. Who knows if anyone will ever listen to these tapes? It's spooky, downbeat, and it leaves you wondering, if this could be covered up, what else don't we know about? I hope you've enjoyed your look at the top 7 episodes of this short-lived but incredible horror series. I would love to hear what your favorite episode is in the comments. So, thank you for watching Dusty Old Movies, have a groovy day, and go play with your pimples.